maybe it's just me, but when I come home from the fabric store, I tend to just toss what I bought on the table and maybe go take the dog out or do some other things with the intention of coming back to it later to put away the things or to make whatever I'm going to make. Or I'm so excited when I get home, I pull the one thing out of the bag that I want to use and I start cutting and I push all the other stuff aside, or I shove it into a cabinet or a drawer or something like that. Sometimes, I have to admit, can't find that bag that I bought and I end up rebuying things, or I come across it weeks later and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, I bought this really cool fabric. But before we get started talking about that and talking about this month's theme, my name is Chris O'Neill from Sew the Distance, and I'm so happy you're here. So this is the month of July. We are going to be focusing on our actual physical sewing space this month. I'm really excited about this because it means talking about how we decorate, talking about how we can best use our space, and talking about some systems that we can have in place, especially when new things come into our space. That's going to be the focus today, is when new things come into our space, what do we do with them? Do we have a plan? We're also going to discuss what we can do to make our shopping trips a little bit more productive and benefit us as makers. So there's a few things I do, or I try to do, and some habits that I really want to establish with this. So the one thing is, when I come home with my stuff that I got at a fabric store or a quilt shop, I immediately put it away. And that means putting it onto the comic book boards, which is what I use to store my fabric, putting any notions away, if I buy new pins, needles, whatever it is, that I put it away immediately. If I can't, say I have to take the dog out or something else has to happen, I definitely make it a priority before I'll sit down and sew and work on any other projects. That's my goal. And I encourage you to do the same if you have the same issue. But let's back up a little bit because there's another habit I have that I'm also trying to break. And that is not being prepared when I go to the store to buy stuff. So sometimes I just like to go browse at fabric stores, but then I get home sometimes and I'm like, oh, why didn't I buy this? Or why didn't I buy that? I needed this batting for this pattern, or I needed this particular color of fabric for this project. So what I've been trying to do is keep a running list on my phone of the things that I need. So when I'm at the fabric store and I'm totally distracted by all the new lines of fabric and all the pretty colors and everything that I see there, I can go back to that list and know exactly what I need. Another thing I started doing is taking pictures of the supply lists for the patterns I'm going to be making or I plan to make. And I take a picture of that so I have it on my phone right in my notes and I can refer to that when I need to. Now, if you're not tech savvy or you don't want to use your phone for this, you can always just keep a notebook in your purse or even in your car of the stuff you need. You could keep swatches of fabric as well. And also, when you go to these fabric stores, they're the experts. They work with colors every day, and getting their opinion sometimes is a lot of fun too. So you can actually bring your project, and if you need a color, like say a binding color, or if you need just a border or anything, they can help you pick a color and you get like that second opinion. You also get the support that you need. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'll probably say it a million times. Our quilt shops, our local quilt shops, the small ones, are one of our best resources as makers. It's really the place to go if you have questions or you just want to run something by somebody or get a second opinion. Another thing I like to do when I go to a quilt shop is buy thread. So I try to buy a spool of Aurifil, which is my personal favorite thread, every time I go to a quilt shop. Not only am I supporting the quilt shop, but I'm starting to build my colors with my Aurifil thread. Maybe for you, you would buy, neutral fabrics, or you would buy a notion that you need or a new ruler. But sometimes it's just good to always have that habit of every time you go that you get something that you'll need eventually. Of course, that depends on your budget. Not all of us have a budget to do that, and we need to also be mindful of that as well when we're making these lists and doing our projects. Now, I get it. Sometimes you just need retail therapy and you don't want to have a reason to go to the quilt shops. Totally there, totally get that. And sometimes it's just fun to browse. But we do get into trouble, or at least I get into trouble when I impulse buy. Sometimes I just see fabric and I don't know how much I need for a project and I underbuy or overbuy, or whatever it might be. So let's talk about your tasks for this week. The first thing is to keep that running list of things that you know you need, or when you're making a project you want to get. That'll help you with impulse buying when you get to the fabric store, and it will help you just stay organized with the projects. And speaking of lists, another task is to keep a list of projects you want to make, whether it be taking pictures of the patterns, or it's just simply taking the pattern or the quilt or whatever with you when you go to the fabric store or quilt shop or wherever it is that you may shop. Next, and this gets to our organized sewing room, is to have a plan for when you get home with the stuff. Now, by now you should have things in its place if you've been following along, so you're able to put away things that you buy new for your space. So if you have a new ruler, you have a place for it, right? And if you have a new piece of fabric, you have a system for that too. So put it away. Don't just put it in a drawer. Don't just put it in a basket or a cupboard or something like that. And finally, your fun task for this week is to visit a local quilt shop. So you should have your list ready. You should have your projects ready. You should know what you need. And that way you can go support some of these wonderful shops, these treasures that we have. Some are struggling to stay afloat. And if you can just even buy something small to support them, it will help. As always, thank you for joining me. Please consider subscribing, giving me that thumbs up, and even commenting below. Have a great week. Make sure you take some time to sew, and I will see you soon. Bye.